Hello, everyone. Welcome to this How to Lobby Training 101. We're really excited about working with all of you and getting our moral muscles exercised and doing some lobbying. My name is Lavona Grow. I'm use she, her pronouns. I'm here on the Piscataway tribal ancestral lands here in the Arlington, Virginia area. And I am so happy that we are able to come together to work on this important work that is in front of us. And to start us off, I'd like to just do a little reading. In my faith tradition, we like to start our meetings that way. So this is actually from the Talmud, and it says, "The day is short, the task is difficult. It's not our duty to finish it, but we are forbidden not to try." So I believe you wouldn't be here if at least you didn't want to try. So we'll get into our work today. So I want to just introduce at this time and just let you know that one of our faith team members of the Earth Bill Network, there's a faith team, and we'll tell you a little bit about that a little later. But David will be helping to sort of monitor what's going on in the chat. There's David there. And if we can queue up questions when the time comes, he will help kind of facilitate that as well. So I just want to preview the agenda a little bit. So that one of the first things, we did some of the questions, when you registered. And so even based right on that, got a sense of kind of what you're looking for. Of course, all of you are looking for a little bit of lobbying, but a lot of you were looking for also additional information about the content, on, what's the ask and what are, details more about the bills. I will be covering some of that, but that is not the primary focus of this meeting. I'll show you where a lot of the information is so that you can find it, and that there are other meetings out there on a regular basis that the Earth Bill Network, which for those of you who don't know, it's a grassroots organization that's mobilizing on federal legislative lobbying. That's the focus of the group. And the Earth Bill is sort of an overarching bill that we'll talk about a little bit more, but there are a lot of resources we can provide for you. So after that, Sarah, I'm going to wait, Sarah Freeman, and she will do a little bit more introduction of herself, but she's with the Friends Committee for National Legislation. She leads their faith-based work on strategy for advocacy, and she hosts this really cool thing about 30 minutes, how to lobby in 30 minutes. And so she's going to do it actually in 20 minutes. And we're going to give you a lot of chance to do some practicing, come back with a lot of questions, but I'm really happy. We work very closely with Fcnl, that's their acronym, that's the Quaker Lobby Organization. They are one of two faith-based lobbying 401c3 organizations. So they have a lot of expertise that they bring to this and a lot of experience. So we're really thrilled to partner with Sarah and Fcnl on this. After that, we will take some Q&As after that. We will then break into some Zoom task groups to sort of practice what we've learned and identify what your additional questions are. We'll come back, do a little report back, and then we'll share some of these reflections and try to answer some of your final questions and some of these resources. I will stay on a little bit longer to answer some additional questions. And what I want to especially hear from you is what you still need by the end of this. So we're going to, before we move into the full part of the program here, I want to do a little poll so we kind of all know who's in the room and what our comfort levels are, who's in the room. So can you see this poll? Okay, so the first question on here is, are you involved with an adopted district team? And you can see the questions there. Yes, you're a team leader, you're a member, not a member, would like to be or considered being it. No, just here to learn about lobbying, and something other that doesn't fit. So that's our first poll. And as soon as you're finished with that, you can take the second one. My comfort level with lobbying skills is on a scale of 1 to 5, and that's newbie to pro. Okay, so you can start the poll. Okay, we've got almost everybody, 86% participating. I'm going to end the poll now, and we'll see what we got. So, all right, so we've got, you can see everybody's, can you see the very first question there? I don't know if that, when I'm scrolling, if that moves it or not, or whether it's there, but looks like we've got an array, of course. Yes, I'm an AAD adopted district team lead. That's about 8 of you, and another 7 are members. And then a good group there of 6 people who just want to learn about lobbying, probably figure out. And then in the second question about my comfort level with lobbying skills, so we have not very many newbies, just a couple, but we do have some novices, and the majority right there in the middle about on an intermediate level, and they say maybe I could take the lead at a lobbying meeting with some training. That's really good to know. And we got at least 6 folks who say I am an advanced level. I have lobbying experience and feel comfortable lobbying, but need a tune-up. All right, and no pros. Very good. All right, I'm going to stop sharing that. So now we know who's in the room. So let's see. I think I can download that. Very good. Oops, lost you. Come back. Very good. Well, thank you. So with that, we're going to move into a whirlwind explanation of what the bills are and Earth bills. So I'm going to actually kind of like show you some resources. I'm going to do some share screen in a minute. Okay, so this is going to be a key document, go-to document. This is something put together for the faith team, but it has almost every link in it that we're going to be talking about. So, so I just want to let you know that's there, that you're going to get that. And, you know, if you're interested in what the team sectors are and who to contact, has that information. I have a list here of the policy sectors. Then for Adopt a District, if you are interested in signing up on that, but a lot of you are already engaged in it, it's here. But here's the Earth Bill in 4 slides, which we're going to preview. And then here's a key piece about, because there's lots of places and it changes on the website or what, you know, as things get updated. And we just launched a new website for just the Earth Bill Network instead of, in addition to the Climate Crisis Policy Digest, which many of you might know. And so right here, you'll see Climate Bill Package that will be supported. And there are new bills that are always being considered. So we have a package, but we have these additional bills that we'll be looking at. So then there's information about signing up for the faith team if you want to join us, some other contact information, and at the bottom it says to learn more. That we have a YouTube channel where, for example, this meeting will be located at a later date. And you see here, the second bullet is a worksheet. And that worksheet is adapted from the Climate Reality Program, but we've tweaked it for our faith community. And it's a kind of like a worksheet for getting started learning about who your member of Congress is and collecting information in preparation for your meeting. Okay, so now I'm going to go over to here. Okay, you still with me with the Earth Bill? See that? Okay, so this is the slide it will go to, which is the Earth Bill. So what is the Earth Bill? So this is sort of a signature thing in terms of the Earth Bill Network, is this one bill that has been written by the folks here to advance the conversation and hopefully get introduced into the American Jobs Plan. So this is right in a nutshell is that stop 80% of our pollution by 2030. And so by moving to renewables, 100% renewables by 2030 in these 3 areas, these are creating mandates. You probably hear a lot now about clean energy standards. This is in this, this is related to it in terms of these 3 areas: electricity, electric vehicles, and agriculture by plant animal corporations. So these slides are available to you and your team. Obviously these pages give a lot more information. I just want to go to the last one here. So it says at the bottom there, let's include the Earth Bill in the American Jobs Act by July 4th. So this will explain the details of what's in there, but it's very simple. As the side here says, clean energy, electricity standards. We need these mandates to be in there in order to really to require utility companies and to source their energy so that we'll be 100% carbon-free renewable. And then so we're talking about areas like wind, solar, geothermal, tidal, and existing hydropower. So I hope you find that comfortable. That's something that'll help raise your comfort levels as we move forward. Then I want to share very quickly. Still with me? Still see the slide, the presentation? Very good. Okay. So, but here is the quick view of the package. Now it says 2020 to 21. You might wonder, what's 2020? Well, we started looking at bills in 2020, and some of those bills are being reintroduced. Some of them have not yet, but we like them, and we want to tell our legislators that we like these bills and the things that are in them. So that's why you will still see them in the climate bill package. Now, this is sort of a summary of what we're going to see. So I've highlighted in blue the 2021 bills that are introduced in the 117th Congress. They have existing then bill numbers that you can see there. One of these bills, as you can see, got passed in the 2020. That's and then some of these others that are in black are those that are from the 2020 package. We organize and kind of think of our issues in these buckets of materials, agricultural land preservation, the forests and wetlands, fossil fuel management, and then environmental justice and just transitions. So that's kind of other ways to organize these things, but that's what we have. So first of all, we have under materials, Break Free from Plastics Pollution Act. That is a 2021 bill. And we have this support information. And I want to let you know that they are putting together fact sheets for each for the issue groups. Some of them are ready, some of them are still in the pipeline. But again, some more resources coming your way. So we got Break Free from Plastics Pollution, another materials bill. This, of course, got passed. So I'm going to in 2020. So I'm going to zip through that. Protect American Children from Toxic Pesticides. That was a 2020 bill. Under Agriculture and Land Preservation, the Farm System Reform Act, 2020. This was also this Agriculture Merger Moratorium Act. We're supporting that concept, and some of these are being included in other bills. This is the Stewardship Act, Climate Stewardship Act. That's a Cory Booker, Senator Cory Booker sponsored. This has been reintroduced and is a bill that we're supporting. And one of the things that it also calls for is, which I don't think is on here, is sort of a stewardship, a core of people to, in terms of jobs, to do the work. So a core of folks. And this is a new bill also this year, Agricultural Resilience Act, which really rewards farmers for promoting carbon sequestration and healthy soil. among other things. And then we have, this is a climate bill, International Forest Protection and Climate-Free Supply Chains for 2021. We don't have a bill number for this yet, but this is a bill that's been brought into the package. Addresses deforestation. Fracking Ban Act hasn't been reintroduced. And End Pollution Welfare Act has been reintroduced. We have this is under the fossil fuel management section here. And also kind of I think from a just transition standpoint, it does include funding for the Black Lung Disability Fund, which I think is important. And one of the most recent, the Environmental Justice for All Act is one of a couple of bills under our environmental justice and just transitions that we're excited about here, but it addresses many of the disparities in the public health concerns in communities, and provides also some ask for appropriations in terms of 75 million annually for research programs and development to reduce health disparities, which is very important. And finally, the Justice for Black Farmers Act 2021 is introduced in both House and Senate. And this also addresses historical failures in our system that have really worked against Black farmers. And there is some money in the recovery, in the recent bills that were introduced for, the COVID kind of recovery to address some of this, but much more needs to be done. There are grants available also. It creates also a farm conservation corps, and the hope is to, end the racial discrimination, and again, several grant programs. So these are the bills that are being considered. And of course, why are we doing this? For our current children and our future generations. So those are a quick tour of the bills. So I think that we need to move on very quickly at this point. I will be putting some of these links in the chat. I'm going to turn it over to Sarah. Sarah?
Thank you, Lavona. And let's see, maybe I can shift my view here. Can everybody see me okay? Good, okay, I see nods. All right, so thank you so much for welcoming me here. It's really nice to join you all and to learn a lot about the work that you're doing. My name is Sarah Freeman-Wolpert. I work at the Friends Committee on National Legislation, which is a Quaker lobby for peace and justice based on Capitol Hill, right across from the Hart Senate office building. We're the big building on the corner, if you've been there to lobby in person before. And I'm the national field organizer, which means that before the pandemic, a lot of my life was traveling around the country. That's my dog snoring, sorry. A lot of my life was traveling around the country with a suitcase and leading trainings. Now I'm at home, which is why the dog is here. But now what I do primarily for Fcnl is I train our network of advocates around the country to be more effective when they talk to their members of Congress about legislation for peace and justice. So a lot of what I work on is anti-war legislation, peace legislation, oh my gosh. But I also talk a lot about the intersections between war and climate change, war and militarism of the police, war and militarism of the border. And so I'm really glad that all of you are working on climate justice. So what I want to do, a couple of things. Sorry about the dog. It's going to crack me up a little bit.
Okay, what's the dog's name?
His name is Michi. I'm going to see if I can wake him up, but he's a pretty hard sleeper. So I've been throwing napkins and it's not working. Anyways, but let me just dive into this, because what we have here is a chance to really dive into the mechanics of how to conduct a virtual lobby visit as effectively and as strategically as possible. And I think that that's what's going to be the most useful to all of you. I do these calls, as Lavona said, I'm going to drop things in the chat as I talk. I do these calls every couple of weeks, Zoom calls with Fcnl called Learn to Lobby in 30 Minutes. And it's kind of a mini crash training in how to conduct, especially an effective virtual lobby visit. Because for many of us, when the pandemic started, if we were doing different kinds of advocacy in district offices, that really changed to Zoom lobbying and to phone call lobbying, and that's much different. And so sort of figuring out how to actually make an effective request of your legislators or their staff, while also building a relationship, which is what Fcnl is all about as a Quaker organization. How do you build a relationship with congressional staff when you're trying to do that over a conference call, if there's no body language, any of these things that we used to kind of rely on to make sure that that conversation was going well, and it's kind of intimidating to navigate anyways, much less now in a virtual format. So let's see. Oh, okay. So someone says you can't hear the dog as much as I can, which is helpful, even if you're just saying that to be nice. Okay, he's really extrapolating. Okay, so what I'd like to do is I'm going to try to share a couple of slides, but it's always my preference to use slides a little bit less. Let's see if this works. If it works, it's going to pop up my face in the corner. Did that work okay? Can you see me and the slide at the same time? Okay.
Yes.
I do.
Yes. Okay. It works like 3 out of 4 times. So sometimes it just turns your face into text. So this is kind of a very abbreviated version of the Learn to Lobby calls. I've skipped over some of the detail around how to schedule and prepare for a visit, because I think many of you may have already scheduled your visits. If you want more information on how to schedule a lobby visit, I always invite you to come to one of these trainings. I also have recordings of past trainings that I can share with you if that's helpful. And these are on, we're a multi-issue organization. In case you don't know about Fcnl, we work on 12 legislative issues, including environmental justice and climate change. And so these are intended to be something that can pivot on different pieces of legislation, as well as, although we only work on federal legislation, these same skills can be applied if you're talking with state or local officials. Because I know a lot of groups are state-based, and while we don't work on state issues or state legislation, excuse me, I think a lot of these tactics and tools for an effective conversation are applicable across the board. So let's get into it. Okay, so preparing for your lobby visit, this is something we're going to practice in a little bit later in this call. Once you have a meeting scheduled, say that you actually get to that point where you have a meeting scheduled with your member of Congress or with one of their staff. One of the most important things from my perspective as a trainer and as someone who's done a bunch of lobbying myself in my own congressional district is to get together the people who are going to lobby with you. You want to always try to get at least one other person to join you on your lobby visit, and have a pre-meeting where you can practice, like do a role play as though you're actually there in the lobby visit, because a lot of us come from different schools of thought or different trainings in terms of how you have an effective lobby visit, and you really want to make sure everyone's on the same page before you have your stakeholder there in the room with you, because things can go in all sorts of strange directions when you wing it on the spot, as probably many of us can speak from experience. If someone gets pulled in at the last second, it's possible they'll bring in a whole different portfolio of things that they want to talk about. They might talk on for 30 minutes and maybe the meeting itself was only 30 minutes, and then it gets derailed, and that doesn't feel good. So we always suggest that you practice. Something that I'm going to share in the chat, in addition to probably some resources you already have with your groups, the local district groups, is what we call the lobby visit roadmap at Fcnl. Again, this may be repetitive. If you have something like this, then just ignore it. But this is something that I use. Let's see. Okay, this is a PDF you can download. You can fill it out yourself, so it has like little blanks that you can fill in with your group. This is what Fcnl uses, so take it with a grain of salt. It may not be the exact same way that you approach lobbying as a group this coming week. Our lobby visit roadmap is something that we always suggest people walk through together as a group before your meeting, so that you can establish a couple of things in that pre-meeting. The first is who's going to be the group leader. So you want to have a couple roles. Who's going to be the group leader, or the person who will kind of introduce the group to your elected official? That person, especially in a virtual lobby visit, is extremely important, because there's so much less feedback to go off of, especially if you're on a conference call with 5 or 10 different people and several congressional staffers, if there's no one there kind of facilitating how the meeting goes, it can be kind of chaotic. So this is the person who will sort of, I think of them as like the MC, like they're the one who kind of hands the talking stick off to each person. And I'll explain that in a second. The second role that you want to establish before your meeting, at least by Fcnl's school of thought, is a note taker. And that person's role is extremely important because ultimately, at least the way that we approach lobby visits is it's both to build a relationship with that office, hopefully with an office that you're trying to find some common ground, even if that takes a lot of research to try to figure out something you can connect with them on, but it's also information gathering. So I can't say how many times we've been able to figure out a really crucial piece of information about what's happening with these pieces of legislation from a lobby visit. The constituents have sent us those notes in a report back and said, they let us know that this is the thing they would need in order to be able to sign on. They need to know who else is going to co-sponsor. They need to talk to this other colleague. They need to hear from military veterans in their district or factory workers from this particular area or that kind of thing. You know, it might give you some intel. So the note taker's role is to write down everything the staff share. And then the last role is to have at least one person in your group, and this can all be the same person if you've just got one, just a very busy person. But the last role is to make sure there's at least one person in your group who's prepared to share a story from their own life about why this issue matters to you. So why does the climate crisis feel so urgent and so personal to you? I'm sure all of us, especially in places that are hit by this astronomical heat wave or Florida with this building collapse this week, there's so many stories that we can think of, unfortunately, about how the climate crisis is affecting all of us directly, and how it's disproportionately affecting Black and brown communities and people of color. So there are so many different stories that we can bring in. It's just really important, at least from our perspective, to ground a lobby visit or any kind of advocacy in a personal story, because that cuts through all of the noise. So if you're not a policy wonk like me, I'm not one of the policy wonks at Fcnl, I'm much more likely to connect with an individual or a group if they can share a story that humanizes this big, abstract, complicated policy issue for me through a window into their own life that I could maybe relate to, whether that's about watching your children or your grandchildren playing outside or seeing how they're not playing outside as much as you did when you were a child because it's too hot, or whatever that story might be for you. All of us have a story that we can share, and those stories really should seek to connect, especially if you're trying to connect around common values with an office that you might have difficulty connecting with, which is at least often our experience at Fcnl. So the role play is very important. And then Lavona, how am I doing on time? Just a quick check. Good, okay.
Doing good.
Okay. Perfect, great. The dog has stopped snoring, so we're all set, great. So now I wanted to dive in a little more depth to conducting an effective visit. What does it mean when you actually show up? And showing up is virtual, right, in this sense, when you're usually calling into a conference call line or opening a Zoom call with your group. How does that go? And what are we going to practice together when we go into our breakout rooms? Because I want you to actually simulate this with a few other people as though you're actually there having the meeting, because it really helps, especially if you feel a little intimidated by the process. I know my head is blocking some of this text, but so most importantly, not most importantly, I could say that about everything here. Very importantly, try to arrive a little bit early to the meeting. It is very normal for something to go wrong with the technology. All of us are figuring out how to live our lives totally virtual. Hopefully that won't be the case forever. And at least for now, congressional offices are primarily meeting with constituents virtually. So you want to show up early to make sure that you have the right number, the right call-in code. And if the staffer doesn't show up at the right time, you want to be able to reach out to them very quickly and see maybe you sent the wrong link. That kind of thing happens all the time. And it's okay, don't panic if that happens. They're very understanding. That's happened to me. Almost half of the lobby visits I've done in the past year and a half has been some sort of technical problem. Then you begin the meeting by having your group leader introduce your group. And the introduction can be very important to kind of center and ground you, especially in the experience and especially the lived experience of the group members who are present. So you want to start with an introduction. Who are you as a group? Are you all united by something? Are you all people of faith? Are you all public school teachers? Are you parents and grandparents, or teenagers yourselves? You know, or what is it that's bringing you all together? Of course, mentioning the group that you're part of and what really brings you into the room, but share a little bit more, something about the street that you live on, the district that you're part of within their state, things like that can personalize it, something about your profession. Give a little introduction of who you all are as a group. Usually when I do a lobby visit, we have enough time at the beginning to do a quick, very, very quick, like 5-word introduction of each person. But you want to ask at the beginning how much time you have, just to make sure that they're not going to rush off to another meeting. So double check the time. Usually when I've done virtual lobby visits, they're 30 minutes. And so then you can plan accordingly, because you want to make sure that you don't run out of time before you've done and said everything you want to in your meeting. After you've done your introduction, and if you've got questions as I go, just drop them in the chat. I'm kind of monitoring that. If this goes off, if there's something I can build in here, but we'll also have questions afterwards. So after you do your introduction, we always recommend thanking your member of Congress for something that they've done in the past, right at the outset, partly because we think it opens up space for a better conversation to follow. And honestly, I think because it's kind of unusual for a group to start out that way. And it sets you apart. It shows, hey, we're actually here because we're interested in having a sustained conversation. We want to meet with you again. We're looking to connect with this office, with our member in the future. We want to build a relationship with the office, because ultimately for us as constituents, this is a way of speaking truth to power. This is a way of making sure our voices are heard, but it's also a way of trying to really reach out and connect with the policy process in a direct way. So introduce a thank you, even if you have to do some research ahead of time to find something to thank them for, especially if it's connected to the issue that you're asking them about. Next, you want to introduce your legislative ask, and make sure it's someone who's comfortable speaking about it, who's not going to feel too intimidated if you can. It helps to send the staffer ahead of time a little information about the ask, so they maybe can pull it up and read it along with you. And I'll also send these slides so that you have them if Lavona wants to include this in some follow-up materials. But introduce your legislative ask. Fcnl always recommends, and this might be slightly different than the way that your training comes from. And so Fcnl always recommends having one specific, clear legislative ask that you bring into each meeting. If you have a package of asks, I think the most important thing is that on each ask, have one specific action that you'd like your member of Congress to take on each of those bills. So for example, Fcnl is working on the Environmental Justice for All Act. There's a lot of co-sponsors, it's gaining a lot of momentum. This is about equity and racial justice when it comes to pollution and environmental devastation. But one thing I would ask my House member is to co-sponsor this bill, because he's not yet a co-sponsor and I want him to come on as a co-sponsor. If the ask is to introduce the Earth Bill as an amendment, that language as an amendment to the American Jobs Plan, which I think was mentioned at the beginning, that's a very clear ask. So that's your ask. You know, I want you to make sure that this language gets included as an amendment. But make sure the ask is really clear and try to repeat it several times throughout the meeting, like 2 or 3 times, so that when you walk away from that meeting or when you hang up, there's no lack of clarity, there's no confusion about what it is you want them to do after your meeting. Otherwise, they may have learned something about you as a group. Maybe they feel fired up to take action for climate change, but they might be left without actually knowing the concrete, specific thing that you want them to do about it. And they have so many things going on at any given time, you don't want there to be any room for interpretation. So that's always our suggestion. Okay, next, and then I'll take a breath and stop once I get through this little piece. The next thing after introducing your ask is to have at least one person from your group share a story from your life about how this affects you or has affected your community directly. It's important to try not to appropriate someone else's story, so something you saw in the news, but speak from your heart, speak from your own experience, try to share why this is personal to you, but practice it ahead of time and try to make sure it's really short. We practice this in 90 seconds, 90-second stories about why our life has been affected by this issue, or someone, you know, in our community, how our community's been affected, because it makes it more personal. Try to identify common values, really make it based on your own experience and your values. Then, and probably most importantly, I will use that phrase now, most importantly, and sometimes overlooked, what we always suggest after doing all of this introduction, all of this talking, and you've got everything so well prepared, is leave time for discussion and for them to respond, because that's where you're going to get a lot of information that you can bring back and strategize with your group. What's our follow-up step? What's the next thing we can ask them to do? What information could we provide them that might nudge them in the direction of making this decision? So we always suggest posing a couple of questions to the member or to their staffers, things like, you know, do you think that the member would come on as a supporter to this issue? Will they do what we're asking? They probably won't be able to tell you there on the spot. What can we do? Most importantly, what can we do to support our member of Congress in doing what we're asking today? Is there some more information you would need, some statistics that we'd have to provide, some other constituents that you would really want to hear from to be able to make up your mind? Sometimes that's the case, and you can actually follow up with them. And at least in our experience at Fcnl, members do come on to legislation after those conversations. That can be very powerful as a follow-up. And then leave a lot of time for them to respond and to have an open dialogue so that you can really get a sense of what they're thinking, what they might need to hear, what kinds of steps you could take following that meeting to really compel them to sign on or to take the action you're asking them to. And then thank them for the meeting and repeat your ask. And then you're done. And that's your lobby visit. I think I heard somebody.
Right on time. This is Lavona.
Right.
Yes.
Perfect.
So we're going to segue, let you have a glass of water or something there, take a little breath. But we are going to go now into some cute questions and answers about what you've heard already. And before we do that, I wanted to underscore, because part of the work that I've been doing over the number of years is also we have a lobby corps, an advocacy corps with the Unitarian Universalists for Social Justice. They went on Capitol Hill every month and lobbied on things. And a few of the members are here, and maybe they'll be in your group and have some experience with some of the virtual lobbying as well. I want to give a tip of if you're doing a phone call, actually with your staff person, which can happen. It's very handy to set up a Zoom meeting though, and be on the Zoom with your team so that you can see each other, talk and chat. I mean, you put yourself on mute and you're on the phone, but we've found that very helpful for handoff or reaction or types of things like that. So that's a possibility. So especially if you're doing that pre-meeting just before, you know, your meeting with your staff. Also, as Sarah had mentioned about asking about how much time you have available. Also, we'd like to ask about what their portfolio is. It's kind of part of warm up, you know, where they're from maybe or something, because you're building a relationship. Because the Earth Bill Network has a large portfolio of bills, this person may be somebody you go back to on some of these bills, but maybe not all of them. So this isn't, I do want to say, this is not a one and done. You know, like if you go and you're going to talk about the Earth Bill and the package and all of this all at one time, you know, you think, well, what else do I talk about? I mean, that's been a question. Well, you're not. There are a lot of bills in that package. You can be going back, you know, every month. Your adopted district team can be going back, but it could be different people that you'll be seeing. Somebody who handles the farm bill, maybe somebody different than who's handling electricity. So think about this over an ongoing period of time as well. And then so they'll do some of the homework for you if you ask who the other staffers who are handling some of these other bills. Okay, we're ready to go into questions. I see that Jim Lawrenson. Hi, Jim. Good to see you. He's one of our Unitarian Universalists from nearby.
Yeah, hi. So, and thank you for doing this. And this is very helpful. It's a good refresher as we get into some real heavy time for this kind of thing. But I wanted to know if there's a good sort of example of what's worked. I mean, you know, so often, and I kind of stopped doing this partly because I felt like it was not really effective. And I know a lot of it is probably, you know, just helpful for strategy, I think, as you said, Sarah, but it'd be good to know of some successes too that, you know, didn't just sort of result in good strategy discussions.
I can share a bunch of stories, but Lavona, did you have any stories that you wanted to share? Or anything, any kind of success stories?
Well, you know, Jim, this is one of the problems. This is not the kind of business of like, you do this day and the very next day we're going to see results. And some of this is for that longer haul. And I do believe it's about changing hearts first and then minds. And that especially among the staff who are critical to providing information and filtering information to their members of Congress, that educating them about the issues, and many of them are very young and don't have a lot of what I would consider life experience. So they maybe not experienced with this. So I have been though in many offices where they are not familiar with the bills, and they are very open to and grateful for learning, you know, about it. So, I mean, that's a very small, maybe a small thing, but if they aren't even, they got thousands of bills that come to them. So having you raise up what's important, you know, in your district or your state is, you know, very helpful. And then you also become known sort of as a good source of information as well. If you can be talking about the impact in you know, in your district. The other thing we have just seen is that sometimes our stories are integrated into the public facing comments that members of Congress make, and that they use those stories and say, my constituents are staying. And also if you also say, speak up on this issue, they don't have to speak up on all these issues. So sometimes we've seen that they will maybe reach out, or they maybe will now become a little bit more vocal about the issue. Does anybody else have something concrete to offer? You can raise it, if you can use your reaction where you can put up your hand. Also, if you have a question.
Mona,
Yes.
I have a little success story.
Great.
When we met with Senator Schumer, you know, we practiced the script quite a lot ahead of time because we know that he likes to talk. And we had a very fun meeting with him. And one of the things that we discovered is that he has a bill that we didn't know about having to do with electric cars. And that was really, really important to know. We hadn't even seen it. It wasn't on our radar. So it's just one of those things. And I think Lavona mentioned also a point that a lot of times the staff haven't even heard of the bills that we talk about, and that we're bringing it to the forefront. We're saying this bill is important. Please take a look at it. Please see if your legislator will co-sponsor.
Thank you, Nancy. And I just want to raise up the work that Nancy is and some folks in New York are doing is really great. And the the network that they have up there, it's really a model. So if you're interested in adopting your state or in a district, Nancy is really a good go-to person about that. Nancy, would you like to put your email address in the chat?
Really, I give Sarah a lot of credit for this. Sarah Gronin also, she's really,
yes,
but I can connect you to her, certainly.
Wonderful. Okay.
And Terry also for coming up with the slides. Terry Mishad, who's on this call.
Great. Well, I don't see any other questions. Wait,
I have one.
okay.
Yes,
Go
okay.
ahead, Mary.
In one of the information sheets that you produced, it says that the Earth Bill is seen as a companion bill to the Green New Deal and Thrive. And that's our point of view. Is that point of view shared by the Green New Deal and Thrive? And is that recognized in the legislature as a companion piece?
I don't know. I'm not aware of that. Is there anybody from Earth Bill Network folks? Nancy, have you heard?
You know, all I would say is that Todd has had conversations with those different groups, and that hopefully there's you know, a kind of collaborative spirit about all of this, that we're all trying for the same thing. And you know, we always kind of say the Green New Deal and Thrive are a set of principles that we agree with, and that the Earth Bill puts it into concrete bill language with mandates.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Can I share something, Lavani?
Yes, hi, Brock.
A success story that comes to my mind quite powerfully was it's an older story, 2007, when we were lobbying for the first new federal wilderness area in Washington State, and a lot of different grassroots people were lobbying on behalf of their, you know, the equestrians, Sierra Club, the Washington Wilderness Coalition, and so forth. And we had a faith letter that was signed by 105 clergy across the state, every corner of the state. And I just so happened to hear from one of the major lobbyers that, and it was kind of an anecdote he shared after the fact, after we got that wilderness designated as an official federal wilderness, the Wild Sky Wilderness, that the faith letter and the faith lobbying was, a lot of legislators remarked that really affected them. That they were very moved by that effort by faith community. So that's just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thanks for raising that up. It does want to underscore what Sarah had said about introducing your group. So if you're faith-based, or now you could be one person in a kind of more secular group of people, you know, with another team members. It could be your congregation, could be people from your faith tradition, could be an interfaith group, but they don't hear from the faith community very often. So we kind of stand out when we actually do show up. Also, I talk about exercising our moral muscle. We don't have to be experts about what's all in the bill, you know, get our knickers in a knot on that and like know what's there. What we're bringing is really the moral message. You know, we're bringing the moral message about what's right to do and why, and bring those stories about those people who are, you know, having the most, you know, impact, those people that are suffering, you know, and we've seen it recently, more recently. Maybe you have those stories to kind of give some thought to about the impact they're having on communities. That's the job of the faith community, in my opinion. And that's what we should be reminding them. And it is an unusual thing for them to hear when they're, you know, they have to figure out how the bill will get, you know, this information will get in what bill, how it will, you know, traverse the system. But it's our job to say, this is what we want. You know, we want Black farmers to, you know, justice. We want, you know, clean air, because we know there's people in Cancer Alley in Louisiana who have spoken to us, et cetera. So that's the kind of thing to kind of think about as well, and not to worry too much about knowing every piece of, you know, the legislation. I think it's now time for us to transition into the task for breaking into groups, where you'll get a chance to practice a little bit of this and identify your questions. And want to make sure you're identifying any questions when you're coming back, you know, to the group. And I just want to let you know that if we can't get everything answered here, we'll figure out a way to get, you know, do another session or something more, you know, specific, or work with the Adopt the District people. Again, I am going to stay on a little bit longer. If you, I did not have an opportunity to share kind of where all the adopted district things are. If we do have time at the end, I will kind of come back to that. Please remind me to do that. And because there are, there are some resources there, and want to help you find them. Okay, Sarah, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, so now we're going to go into breakout rooms. I'm going to put a really quick kind of overview of the main things that you want to practice in your group. So if you can figure out someone who's going to act as the group leader, someone who will act as kind of the note taker, although it's mostly just going to be a simulation, and someone who will share a story. What I hope in the breakout rooms is that at least each of you can think about a very short and concise but powerful story from your own experience about why this issue matters to you, and pick someone who will be the group leader and the storyteller, and then actually use this kind of rundown to practice the lobby visit as we've just gone through it, to see what's the part that you get stuck on, what's the part that feels kind of unclear, so that when we come back together, we can answer those really specific questions, and you will have actually had a little bit of time to practice it together in your groups, okay? So at least somebody who's the storyteller and someone who acts as the group leader, who kind of introduces the group and passes things along to each speaker. You'll go between the storyteller and the group leader, and then you can also have someone who's kind of pretending to be your member of Congress. And if there's many people in your group, you can use different members to take on these different pieces, thanking the member of Congress, delivering your ask. If you're all from different places, you can just make it up. You can make up sort of a pretend whoever you're speaking to, the staffer, just so that you have a way to simulate it in this particular example. Okay, Lavona, I think we're going to open the breakout rooms now.
All right. Welcome back, everyone.
How did it go? Let's see. I think we've got still some folks who are in their breakout rooms. Is that right?
Yeah.
Let's see.
We had a pretty good session, but I did have a question. Do you want me to wait till everybody comes back?
Good.
Yeah, where are they?
Lavona, you can probably see if, oh, okay. I think we've got a few who are still stuck in their room for another 40 seconds or so.
Oh,
So that's okay. We can start debriefing now because we're recording.
Oh, wait a minute.
Let's check that out.
This
sure,
is
Rebecca, go ahead.
Okay. One of the questions I had is if the ask that we're pushing for doesn't get answered, and we schedule a future meeting, is it better to approach with consistency in the ask, or is it better to change the language in how you approach what you're, because I'm in Maloney's district and she does a coffee with Carolyn once a month, and I brought up the Earth Bill, and we had a climate crisis policy group meet with one of her staffers about a month ago, and we discussed the Earth Bill, and now we're looking to go there this Friday. And I really liked the way you phrased it, Sarah, about amending the language and including the Earth Bill language in the American Jobs Act. It's a little different ask than I think how we presented it a month ago, but what's the best approach, or is it just continuing to build that relationship and get there and push until it gets done, or does it sometimes never get done?
Yeah, maybe we can both answer that. Yeah, about the Earth Bill. If you've gone back several times on the same bill, of course you're going to learn something, hopefully, about what's with them, what's in it for them, that member, or maybe some different kind of story. But because we have the package of bills to choose, I would personally, I'd go back on a different bill. If they're not going to want to meet with you after a while, if you're just coming back on that same one without any new information. And I don't think there's going to be new information to provide. This is not a bill that has a bill number. This is a concept. This is a concept. Sarah, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, a little bit of this is about the theory of change, and for all of you as a local group, figuring out how you want to strategize. A lot of groups, more so than Fcnl, will switch a different ask each meeting, because then it's something fresh and you don't get that feeling or the response from the staff, okay, you told us about this last month. Sometimes we hear that. We often bring back the same ask for a long time. We just shift the vehicle. So because for us, our kind of, our view of it is kind of a long-term, persistent over a long, the drip of water that can, erode over time. But we don't, like, we wouldn't bring an ask without a bill number necessarily. We would find some way to bring it up. So like, you know, we're asking you this time to include this language as an amendment to this larger spending package, or we're asking you to make public statements of support for other members to support the introduction of this as a bill with a bill number, or whatever that might be. The most important thing that crosses, I think, between both approaches is to make sure that whatever you're asking, it's really clear and specific, and to repeat it a bunch of times. So whether or not you change focus each time, or if you stay consistent, a lot of that is about your group's energy. What's the thing that's going to keep people coming back? Is it the desire to see something that you've worked on for 3 years finally pass? It takes a long time, it's really hard, but it does. Or is it working on something fresh, but just make sure that you have a really clear thing that you're asking them to do, as specific as possible, because it's more likely they'll actually do it.
I don't know how to raise my hand virtually, but I do have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm wondering if it would be a good idea to keep track of things that are going on with our bills. Like, are there pilot programs that have proven successful, or have there been any new scientific discoveries that support our position, or stuff like that, that is new information, not necessarily an ask, not anything like that, but just stuff they didn't know before that we can tell them.
Yeah, actually, I want to mention this. One of the offices that the Unitarian Universalists went in on, this was on infrastructure bill, actually like 2 years ago or so. And the one thing in some of the Republican offices was one little piece that we mentioned about that there's new technology for cement. And, you know, like you find something, and that was the one thing that was like, oh, really? Tell me about that. You know, so it's what, you know, whatever little hook, you know, and again, you're bringing then some expertise, you know, to the table, or something new, which I think then they'll help. If you're building a relationship, then they know, hey, I want to meet with these people again, or they have some good solid information. Yeah, you know, to mention. I'm a little bit following up on what also was said, the question last time, but related to this as well, is an example of like an adopted district team that up in New York, the Franciscans, what they have taken from the bill package are things that have to do with agriculture, farming, you know, justice related things, those bills, that package, that smaller package of bills, and that's what they want to work on. Mm-hmm. That's another approach too, that you can really be taking. Are some related bills, you know, and then build in. If you want to learn a lot about in depth and really like wonky stuff, attend the issue or join in even one of the issue teams. And there are the second Tuesday and the fourth Wednesday. There are speakers. I mean, like the last one we had to do with agriculture on sequestration. I mean, in really a lot of detail. But you can get some really interesting factoids or stories and information, and an opportunity to ask a lot of questions there.
How would you go about joining them? If you get a notice or something?
Yeah, yes. If you're on the overall list of EBN, the Earth Bill Network, you will get that information. I did put a link, information in the handout, that faith team handout. Contact Greg Wagner if you ever. They are now coming up with the link is there to contact Greg. Okay. And then they have come up with one Zoom link, since there were so many floating around before. There is now, folks, one Zoom link for all of these different meetings. Keep that someplace close at hand for you or you put it on a recurring meeting. And I will, in fact, Christine is still on. I think I was asking her about that earlier. She's works with the issue teams. But we'll get that to you. So David, if you're keeping some of those notes about what we need to follow up on, that's something we can get to you.
Lavana,
is that broad? Yes.
Are there recordings for those meetings?
Yes, there are.
Like issue meetings? And where can we get the recording link?
Okay, the issue team meetings, not the working teams. I don't believe they meet like you know, some of them meet like every week or whatever. But the meetings on Saturday and on Wednesday, those meetings, the general meetings, those are on the YouTube website. Again, there's a link in the faith handout, that one pager. And so help me make that stronger and more helpful. Also, just please let me know. So we're at 4:26. Any other questions? And if not, we have another poll to give you. And also I could try to show you where a couple of the adopted district things are. And I just want to mention, I put a document. It's pre-pandemic. It's not about virtual, but it's the Youth for Social Justice, the group that I worked with. It's called Anatomy of a Congressional Meeting. So it has sort of like our step-by-steps and how many minutes even maybe to be spending on these things. So it's another resource. And again, on the faith handout, there is a worksheet under the resource section about preparing, doing the research, you know, what kinds of things to look for in preparing for the meeting. You know, go to the website, go to, you know, find the, you know, go to the members' website, of course, and what committees are they on, you know, that type of thing. What press releases, you know, Twitter, if the person's on Twitter or Facebook page, do a little research on that. Those things. Sarah, anything else on that?
Yeah, Lavona.
Oh, Rachel?
I'm a little confused. I'm ecstatic about the things that you showed when you shared your screen. Are you going to email us a little packet, or how am I going to get this?
Almost all of those things, except again, I'll have to consult with somebody else about the slide deck where there were the Earth Bill package, but the 4 bill, you know, the Earth Bill, that again, just go to that one page health, the faith.
And you're sending me the one pager?
Yeah, it's in the chat. I can post it again.
It's in
Oh,
chat.
it's in the chat. All right, then I will print out the chat. Okay, thank you. That's
Yes,
terrific.
so you
I
can
got it.
save the chat. Be sure to do that if you don't know.
How do you,
Yes, of
how do you
course.
do that?
Okay, so because this is important for a lot of meetings, is so in the chat, if you notice where you type your message, type message here, over to the right, it says file. You see
I don't
that?
see anything. Oh, yes, I see file. I see
And
file.
then to the right of that, there's 3 little dots.
Yes,
Click on the 3 little dots.
yes.
There you
Save
go.
chat.
Ah,
You got it.
And
It
save
will
it to
save.
what? How do I know where I saved it to?
Yeah, it's usually under documents.
Okay.
For most people, I don't.
All right, I'll find it.
Yeah,
I'll find it.
Very
Okay.
often it'll stay up on your screen, and then look at the HTML, you know, the web browser's link for your own computer. So mine
Sure.
goes to one that's on documents and Zoom, and if
Okay.
that's how you find it.
Okay. Wow.
Okay, we've got 4:29. I'd like to launch a poll, and then we'll wrap up.
Oh,
Okay, so and remember just to mute yourself if you're not talking. I mean, well, not talking intentionally to us. So here we go. This is just preparation for our meeting. And I think, Sarah, you were going to chat maybe while they're talking a little bit about scheduling.
Oh yeah, okay, so one thing that I wanted to share really quick, just because a few people in the initial poll mentioned that they might be interested in hearing that first part of the Learn to Lobby training. But someone had asked about contacting the scheduler, kind of how you would go about scheduling a meeting in the first place. My thought is always to try to contact the scheduler when you can. You can try to reach out to the specific policy staffer. They might be busier than the scheduler. I'm gonna drop 1 or 2 links in the chat. One of them is, there's a resource on Fcnl's website that might be helpful. It's a place that you can look up the scheduler's email address for any of your members of Congress. So if you want to write to them directly when you're scheduling a meeting, that's a really great tool that helps me a lot. You can find any scheduler's email address there using kind of the generic format, and also, you know, this lookup tool for their names. So that's always what I suggest trying first. If you don't hear back, of course, be really persistent and try calling or emailing, but that's where I start.
Yeah, at USJ, we usually ask for the staffer who's dealing with that particular bill. If we're able to get them, the protocol then, once you have their names too, is the same in the House, and then there's for the Senate, so you can actually figure out then how to email them. We've had a lot of luck with that. And over time, again, if you're building up your portfolio of contacts, then that'll be good. Okay, I'm ending the poll and sharing the results. So got 10 folks and 6. Yeah, and do you feel prepared to tell your story? I'm really glad to hear that. Great, good. Yeah, wonderful. Okay, and I've got one more poll for you, and this is going to help us figure out what we should do next. Okay, I'm ending the poll. Got 15 people, and here's the results. Yeah, a mix here. So mostly finding where resources and information is. Okay, learning about the nuts and bolts of the Adopt a District campaign. All right, well, that's pretty definitive. Yes. Very good. All right, I'm going to stop sharing that. Well, thank you for doing that. So hopefully, this is real high tech here, about, you don't know maybe which way to go right now, but hopefully it's clearer, and any path, it's not a wrong path. I mean, it's just doing something. I think for a lot of this right now is creating some noise out there and being persistent. There is something, I didn't get a chance to share it, but there is a tool that's out there. I'm going to show you this. This might be helpful for some of you to get started. Now, number one, you can also call. You might want to just get your feet wet with making a phone call to your legislator or send that email. That's good too. The phone calls are helpful for them to hear. And let's see, how can I quickly share this? There's an organization, we didn't really know that they were doing this. And that curates actions. Okay, so it's called Inside the Movement. And lo and behold, look what's there. Keep It 100, July 2nd, Pollution Independence Day, which is our Earth Bill Network. So it says tell your representative. So you click on that and it will take you to an action, an action alert that you can do. And it says start writing. So you fill this out. So if you weren't able to set up a meeting, maybe with your member of Congress this time, this is something that you can do because the timeline for the infrastructure bill and what they're doing is very quick. We will be entering into the reconciliation process, which will be a little bit longer timeline, and a lot of right now with the compromise, as you know, there's a lot of things we really wanted, I don't think is going to appear there, but the reconciliation process, where you need a simple majority to pass these things, are expected to be introduced into that bill, and we need to stay vigilant. So I hope that will just be persistent. Okay, so thank you very much. I'm going to end the recording, and I'll stay here. And thank you, Sarah, so very much, and thank you all for your active participation. It's been really great, and hopefully we will be maybe doing this again, and we'll make the recording available for sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Good to see you all. Bye-bye. Thanks, Sarah.
Bye.
Thank you.
Very good.